Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. I'm your host, Uncivil Law, a licensed attorney in both Texas and Virginia, and we are here today to respond, react to, and appreciate the documentary done by Daily Wire. I've never seen it. I have never seen this documentary. I never got around to seeing this documentary, and so this will be a first watch for me, as well as you. I've seen some trailers, I've seen some clips, but I've never actually seen the documentary all the way through. So it'll be exciting for all of us. So this was produced by Daily Wire and made available for free for a 24-hour period on Twitter. Twitter initially made it a censored post. They didn't allow people to retweet it. They didn't allow people to share it. They said because it contains some misinformation, right? Because at one point, a father refers to their own biological daughter as a daughter, and that is misgendering, and that's not permissible, and apparently some other violation along those lines. So, but they refused, of course, to censor their video, and eventually, apparently, Twitter changed its mind because now you can retweet it. So I thought we would respond to this and react to it in detail. And in sort of my answer to the question of what is a woman, I would say it is a biological adult female. And as to what a female is, I would say typically XX. You know, obviously there are some genetic mutations. And as to those mutations, we'd have to consider them in a more, individualized way. But, if we just say 99% of the time XX, that pretty much covers it, right? So I am not a woman because I am an XY. I am a man. And so I'm an adult, but I'm not a woman. So that makes it easy for me. So Matt Walsh is going to go around and try to ask this fairly simple question: what is a woman? And be stymied. It'll be exciting. So we will just note the warning here that Daily Wire themselves put in their own video. Warning, this program contains discussions of transgenderism, gender dysphoria, and gender reassignment surgery. Some viewers may find the content and imagery disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. You have been sufficiently warned. Let's go ahead and get this started. Okay.
Being a dad is one of the great privileges of my life. Give my son a BB gun, and that's just about all the emotional support he needs. My daughter, on the other hand, I've heard people say that there are no differences between male and female. Those people are idiots. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 4. I host a talk show. I give speeches. I write books. I like to make sense of things.
I like to make sense of things
but
too,
making sense of females is a whole other matter. Even astrophysicist Stephen Hawking, who could come up with a theory on black holes, was completely dumbfounded by women.
Women. They are a complete mystery.
And now our culture is telling us that the differences between girls and boys don't matter. That if you identify as something, then you are that thing. How do we help our kids make sense of this when they're bombarded with conflicting messages about gender and identity? Forget trying to figure out women. The real question is, what is a woman?
There you go. All right.
As you grow, your body changes from that of a young girl to that of a woman. Soon, Molly will be a young woman, having dates, going to dances in lovely romantic dresses.
The boy's shoulders are broad and his body muscular, while the girl's body is more curved.
I'd like to know more about different kinds of hormones.
The presence of these hormones in the blood brings about many changes in the bodies of both boys and girls.
Being a woman is one of the things I like best about myself. I think you'll like it too.
Okay. What is a woman? Let's find out together.
I like to come out here to think. Nature seems to always tell the truth, even when we don't want to hear it. Truth is, I'm not very good at fishing. But what is truth? Is there a truth?
Oh, dude, man, if we get into the question of what is truth, like what is capital T truth, dude, we could have a really deep philosophical discussion on that one for a while, dude. That is one rabbit hole on what is capital T truth. Holy shit, dude. Let's try not to dwell too hard on that one.
Is this what progress looks like? Can my boys really become girls? Do I have 4 daughters? Do I now have to pay for 4 weddings? Is there a son trapped in my daughter's body? If so, how do I get him out? Are any of my kids who they claim to be?
Heather says 133 million people in the world are intersex. Yeah, that sounds about right. What do we have? A world population of about 7 billion. So that's 1/10 of a seventh. So that's about a 70th. Yeah, maybe it's a little high at 133 million. But, you know, something in that order of magnitude might be correct, depending on how you're defining intersex. But yeah, so we can correctly define it most of the time. So, okay, fair.
Who are these people? Who am I? I better see a therapist.
In the state of Tennessee, I'm a licensed marital and family therapist, which basically means I've been trained up to think about like systems, family systems, how we were raised up, how that shapes who we are today.
So on your website, if you'll bear with me,
Sure.
Quoting, you say, I use a combination of approaches in my therapeutic work, including anti-oppression, feminist, and narrative frameworks. I rely deeply on systems theory and understanding that individuals are products of and in dialogue with our surroundings, including our families, broader culture, workplaces, nature, and political climates. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, so thinking about the modalities that I
That does sound like a lot of word salad. I'll have to give it to that. What does that mean? That sounds like a lot of word salad. Yeah.
use, I'm definitely informed by like feminist family therapy, and the idea is that we live in gendered worlds where there are certain imperatives that are placed on us about who we are and what we do based on how we've been gendered. From the minute I was assigned female, I was told, okay, these are the kind of clothing that you're going to wear. These are the kind of the type of play that you're going to engage in as a child, the path that maybe your life will take because of social expectations.
What do you mean by assigned female? Who assigns female?
Yeah, so most times people, when they're born, they're assigned a gender
By the
doctors. Yeah.
Like, what do they base that assignment on?
So basically, it's based on genitalia. So people looking at genitalia and deciding, okay, this is a girl or a boy. And we know now that that sex and gender are so much more than just this binary. Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
Not really, no.
That's not how gender works.
How do we know that? How do we know that that's not true? Where did we learn that from?
Yeah, well, I learned that from hearing from transgender people who've said, like, oh, I'm a trans woman, and just because I happen to have a penis, right, that doesn't mean that this is like who I am as a person, or that genitalia doesn't equal gender. Who they are, their gender expression, that, yeah, a trans woman is a woman. With
the fluidity of these things, how do I know if I'm a woman? You know,
Good question.
That's a great question.
It is a very good question.
Yeah.
I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
So how do I know?
Yeah, Matt, that question right there, like that question is like when it's asked with a lot of curiosity, right? That's the beginning of a lot of people's like gender identity development journeys.
If my mom who gave birth to me is a woman, and my wife is a woman, though I haven't asked her, maybe I should. But if they're all women, and also the boy who sits down with you and says, I think I'm a girl, actually is one, then what is a woman?
Great question. I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Which leads to the next logical question. How do you know you're not a woman? How do you know you're not a woman? Uh-huh.
I thought therapy would make me less confused. Am I the only one feeling this way?
No, Matt,
I
I'm
need to hit the road and find out.
a little off confused as well over here.
We're talking about gender in society. Let me start with a real basic question. What is a woman?
Woman?
I don't want to assume, but you guys are all
Yeah.
women?
We're all women.
Yes, we're women.
So how would you define it, like in the simplest terms?
That is hard.
Yeah, it is. It is a stumper.
A woman is someone that likes to be pretty and think of themselves as a delicate creature.
I'm pretty indelicate.
Okay.
I could be a woman too.
Yes, you could.
Defining womanhood is just a project of someone who identifies as a woman.
Yeah, but what do they identify? You see what I'm saying? What do they identify as? They identify as a woman, but what is that?
I honestly don't know.
Going great over here, guys. Yeah. So it's like the project is someone who identifies as a woman, but what are they identifying as? When they say I'm a woman, what are they identifying as? What is the category to which they are ascribing their membership? Right? I am part of the set of these things. I am a member of this set. Right? So what is the set? You know, you can think about this in mathematical terms, if you like. Does this number belong in this set? Well, how do you define the set? To know if the number belongs in the set. How do you know if it's how do you know if the species is part of the genus? Right? How do you know? You have to have the category. How do you know if this thing is part of this set of things? You have to be able to find the set. So I'm saying, okay, I'm part of the set, but what are you saying that you're a member of? I have no clue. So basically you're literally saying something that is literally meaningless. It literally is devoid of meaning in the most literal sense. It has no meaning because you have no clue what it is. And also the word itself is truly meaningless because the word itself does not convey any meaning. It is a literally meaningless word. So what's the point? Carrying on.
It's a simple question. So why is it so hard to answer? This is going to take some serious investigation. For all of human existence, women were understood to be a certain thing.
Well,
so what changed? No one can seem to answer the question now. Over 2,000 surgeries and counting, Dr. Marcy Bowers is the nation's preeminent sex change surgeon. Surely someone who does sex change surgeries can answer what a woman is. Dr. Marcy Bowers, first of all, thanks for talking to us.
My pleasure.
So you're a world-renowned gynecologist and surgeon. You're also a transgender woman. Can you tell me a little bit about...
Well, I mean, I identify as a woman, but...
You're a woman, right.
I'm a woman with... I mean, that's my life, day to day, but I have a transgender history.
So one thing on your website, it says gender-affirmed, GAV, gender-affirming vaginoplasty. What is that exactly?
A vaginoplasty is creation of a female vagina and vulva. We're altering the physical characteristics of the individual to fit better with a gender identity that is female.
This is all constructed from the penis?
Yes, that's right. The surgeries are quite refined in the sense that they really, not only do they look like female anatomy, but they also function that way, for the most part. I mean, certainly it's a bit of a Faustian bargain. You know, it's not perfect.
Does anyone ever regret their surgeries? Or, well, we know they do, but how often do people regret their surgeries?
Well, actually, we don't know that they do. There are legitimate detransitioners, and there are people who truly feel that in their journey, they may have made a mistake. Now, fortunately, this is a really, really uncommon phenomenon.
I don't know if you've ever heard of people in the trans-abled community. These are people who are physically able-bodied but feel like they should be disabled or identify as such. For example, a man who has 2 arms but feels like he should have 1. If a man in this kind of marginalized community went to the doctor and said, I want to have my arm cut off, do you think that...
That doesn't have anything to do with gender identity.
Well, it's someone's self-identity, how someone identifies.
That's someone who has and I'll accept it as a mental diagnosis, a psychiatric condition. I don't even pretend to know what aptomenophilia is all about, but somehow it's the idea that you're fascinated or charmed by having a limb or part of a limb missing. Okay, I would say that's, pardon my non-medical language, kooky.
You don't see any? You think this is totally irrelevant?
Yep.
So the biggest, broadest question is, what is a woman?
A woman is it's a combination of your physical attributes and then what you're showing to the world and the gender clues that you give. And hopefully those match your gender identity.
The critics on the other side of this, of this issue.
There aren't many, but go ahead.
There aren't many who would disagree with what you're saying about...
Well, the dinosaurs of the world are certainly out there. Yeah.
The dinosaurs of the world. There aren't many. Really? There aren't many. There aren't many. They're just the dinosaurs of the world. Wow. Okay. And this person sees no comparison or no analogy between the person who thinks that they shouldn't have an arm. And there are people that have that belief or other limb. And sometimes will go to the extreme of self-amputating because their belief is so strong. So we see no combination between people who have that perception of their self and a person who wants other kinds of surgeries to conflict with biological realities, let's say. We see no comparison between these two things. Really? You can't see any connection between those two things. Is it possible that you might be a little bit willfully blind on this one? Because they seem like they might have something to do with each other. In both cases, a person wants a surgery based on a deep set internal belief of their identity that conflicts with a biological reality. And they want a surgery to conform their biology, or at least their appearance, to conform to their self-perception. You don't see any connection between the two. Okay. All right. Let's go to Aberdeen. This should be good.
How long have you been running the shop here?
25 years.
Wow. Now, you had an incident here a little while ago that went really viral online. Lots of reaction in the public.
Aberdeen Councilwoman Tiesa Meskis confronted owner Don Suker about a sign he posted in his store.
One day I just put the sign up over here, and he came around the corner, and I thought, okay, I recognize him. I says, oh, I recognize you. You're our new city councilman. He says, no, I'm your new city councilwoman. So it was kind of on from there.
You know what? It's bullshit.
No, what you're spouting is bullshit.
No, it's not. Trans women are women, sir. That sign is bullshit.
I've been doing this 25 years. I've never had a problem with anybody, whether they're
Also, not to put too fine a point on it, of course, but because they are now an elected governmental official, going to a private business and saying, I don't approve of your speech, carries with it some First Amendment implications, right? If a normal person off the street did this, that's one thing, but apparently they're an elected governmental official now. So let's break out our First Amendment analysis, children. Let's get started with this.
they're gay, transsexual, anything.
Now, you're saying councilman, this individual was saying, I'm a woman.
Right.
And you said you're not a woman. How do
Okay.
you know that person's not a woman?
How do I know?
Yeah.
Well, common sense.
Trans women are women!
Doesn't the science say that if someone identifies as a woman, then they are?
No, no. Now that's completely bogus. I don't care if you think you're a sheepdog and you come into my store, it don't matter to me. Just don't come in and try to shove that shit down my throat.
If it makes someone feel better, what about their feelings?
I don't give a shit about their feelings. I'm old.
What about the Star
Good
Wars
for you.
universe? Jar Jar Binks, pansexual, do you think? Transgender?
Why would I even care?
If it's his truth.
Well, it ain't true.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major. Or are you?
No.
No? Okay. How do you
I
know
identify as one.
that you're a man?
How do I know that I'm I guess because I got a dick.
Well, I guess Don isn't overthinking.
Well, he's got a definition. He's got a definition. He's at least able to answer the question. You know, I agree with him or disagree with him, but he's got a definition. He's got a definition of sets of things, and he's like, here's how I define the set. I have the attribute that is required to be part of the set. Therefore, I'm part of the set. You also have that attribute. Therefore, you're part of the set. No, you're not. No, I'm not. Well, yes, you are, because it's part of the definition of the set. So Don over here has got working definitions. Don over here can answer the question. Don's doing fine.
Thinking it. He admits he's not a gender studies major, or at the very least, a doctor. Maybe I should go talk to one.
My name is Michelle Forcier, and I have a medical degree from University of Connecticut, residency, University of Utah Pediatrics, and I've worked for a number of different Planned Parenthoods for 20 years. I do advanced contraception and abortion, as well as gender hormones, and sort of looking at the whole sort of schema of gender, sex, and reproductive justice.
So you've done a lot of work in this field. Could you just start by telling us?
Sure.
At what age can a child first begin to transition into another gender or identify themselves as a gender different from how they were born?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's research and data that show that babies and infants understand differences in gender. Some children figure out their gender really early, and the reason why we say, oh, it's interesting or important is because they're figuring out their gender identity is not necessarily congruent with their sex assigned at birth.
When the doctor sees the penis and says, this is a male, has the sex of male, that's an arbitrary distinction?
Telling that family, based on that little penis, that your child is absolutely 100% male identified, no matter what else occurs in their life, that's not correct.
So what is gender affirmation care you're a big proponent of? If we walk through, a child is sitting down with you, is questioning their gender. What's the gender affirmation process?
Affirmation means that as a pediatrician, as someone who says my job is to provide the best medical care for you, is I need to listen really carefully. And how I put it in words for kids so that they can understand it is, tell me your story. Where have you been in terms of your gender and your gender identity? Where are you right now? And more excitingly, where would you like to be in the future?
Have you ever met a 4-year-old who believes in Santa Claus?
Mm-hmm.
So this is someone who believes that a fat man is traveling through the sky on a flying reindeer at lightning speed, coming down his chimney with presents.
Yeah.
Would you say that this is someone who maybe has a tenuous grasp on reality?
They have an appropriate 4-year-old handle on the
Sure.
reality
Agreed.
that's very real for them.
Agreed. But Santa Claus is real for them, but
Yeah.
Santa Claus is not actually real.
Yeah, well, but Santa Claus does deliver their Christmas presents.
No.
Well, yeah, but he's not real, though.
To that child, they are.
When I see a child who,
We can't even say that the child's belief in Santa Claus is false. That's how deep we're going in the rabbit hole. Yes, to the child, it is true. That doesn't make it true. People can believe things that are wrong. People can believe things that are false. It doesn't necessarily make them liars, of course, because we've covered this distinction many times, right? So the child is not lying, but they're telling falsehoods because the child doesn't know what they're saying is false, right? The lack of knowledge precludes what they're saying from being a lie. Now, they might have been lied to because the person who told them knew. So they were lied to. But from their perspective, what they say is not a lie because they don't know. So yeah, the child believes something that they believe genuinely. They genuinely believe it is true. That is what precludes it from being a lie. But that doesn't make it true. It might very well be false because it's wrong. And we can't even get that far. We can't even get to the idea that, yes, the child might believe something that's false. Yes, it's true to them. Therefore, it is true in fact. No. But we can't even admit that much because if we admit that much, we admit that children might believe false things. And then the next logical question is, okay, what other things does the child believe that might be false? Right? The child might be insistent, persistent, and consistent, as the gender transitionists sometimes like to say. What we look for is insistent, persistent, and consistent. But just because you're insistent, persistent, and consistent doesn't mean that you're right. Doesn't mean that what you're saying is true. It just means that you personally believe it. But we can't even admit that much. This is going great.
believes in Santa Claus. And then let's say this is a boy and he says, I'm a girl.
Mm-hmm.
This is someone who can't distinguish between fantasy and reality. So how could you take that as a reality?
I would say that as a pediatrician and as a parent, I would say how wonderful my 4-year-old and their imagination is.
Okay. I mean, fine. That works. Like, if they believe in Santa Claus, how wonderful their imagination is. And imagination is a good thing to have because imagination can let us build worlds of fantasy. And fantasy can be fun. And there's an entire genre called fiction. Well, I'm not even sure it's a genre at that point. There's an entire category called fiction as opposed to nonfiction, because fantasy can be fun. It can be the basis of some incredible worlds. It can let you be a billionaire in the case of J.K. Rowling, for example, because the fantastical creation of your mind can be so compelling that people love the fantasy. But it doesn't mean that it is in fact real. I don't think there are a lot of people out there who think that Harry Potter is in fact a biography. So the fact that we know it's a fantasy doesn't preclude it from being enjoyable. It doesn't preclude it from being something that's compelling. And also, of course, imagination is important in even factual fields, because how do you invent the next thing? How do you make the next discovery? As a scientist or as a lawyer or as any professional, how do you make the next discovery is with the imagination. How do you find the next thing? It's like, well, what if we tried this? And a lot of those ideas don't work, but every once in a while they do. And you come up with the next drug, you come up with the next treatment, you come up with the next idea of legal thinking. I always used to like this in law school, and people liked it less than me. but I always used to like taking an idea from one element of law in somewhere and trying to apply it in like a completely unrelated domain. It's like, let me take this principle that is in this, I don't know, battery case, and let me see if I can use this somehow as a principle that I can somehow sideline into this case dealing with, I don't know, securities fraud. You know, can I somehow use and steal this idea? Can I play like 6 degrees of separation and somehow make a chain between concepts, and that allows me to use this concept over here in a way that might make sense? And I always used to like that. And so imagine, and a lot of those ideas, of course, won't work. But a lot of those ideas won't work. You know, there's a reason that the delineations exist in the first place. But the incentive to try something and see if it might, and it itself might fail, but lead to another set of ideas. So yeah, imagination itself is very, very important. But you need to keep the distinction between the fantasy and the reality. So, anyways.
Aren't kids famous for their active imaginations? Should we really let our children define reality? If I say that I feel a certain way, then obviously you can't tell me I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But just because I feel that way, does that mean that it's true?
I mean, if it's your reality.
Yeah, if it's your reality.
It's truly like none of my business.
So we all have our own
identity.
realities? What if I said, I want you to say that it's true that I'm a woman? Would you say that?
Okay, you're a woman.
I would also say that.
If you want.
Yeah.
I honestly don't care. Like, whatever makes you happy.
What's true to you can be false to me. So like, it's like.
What if I said that it's true? My truth is that you don't exist. Does that mean you no longer exist?
I mean, if that's your truth, sure. I don't, because
but you do.
Well, I mean, if you're saying that I do, then I do.
Well, but even if I said that you don't, you still do, because we're having this conversation.
I mean, are we?
I think so. I mean, I thought...
That's what you think.
Well, I should have known it would be hard to define reality.
So the proposition that I don't exist, well, yeah, so I guess she believes in solipsism. So she believes that if a person believes that they're the only person that actually exists, then that might be true. Maybe she's just really deep into the philosophical school of solipsism. I'm betting she's never heard of it before, though. So, good times.
In Hollywood, I should probably look to the place where truth is the foremost pursuit. The American University.
Oh, dear.
What we do in gender studies is not just reduce gender to what psychologists might call individual differences, but rather thinking about gender, and that's not women and man, but gender as a social form, something that kind of infuses itself into virtually all aspects of social life.
Let's talk about that then. I guess we should start with, we've got gender and sex, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the two? Is there a difference?
I saw that in your questions and I thought, my goodness, this is what we spend an entire semester kind of thinking through. But what we tend to think about in the social sciences today is that sex refers to a set of biological characteristics and gender is a social construct or category. What I think is often misleading about that characterization is allowed to be sort of messy and complicated. But in that framing, when you split them up into these wholly discrete constructs, studies scholars, and really more specifically people who study gender and sex, we're not talking about sexuality right now. And the kind of academic universe that I travel in is that we see how deeply gendered ideas, cultural ideas about masculinity and femininity, maleness and femaleness, both in humans and in lots of other animals.
So are gender and sex two different things? Or?
Well, I think that they both are And they aren't. I'm comfortable saying that gender and sex are two different constructs, but they're deeply intertwined with each other.
We're talking about gender and sex, and there's a lot of controversies there. If we're talking about a trans woman has all of the male physical characteristics, so would that not be a male then? Couldn't we plainly say this person is a male?
Well, I guess it's like, why are you asking the question? I think I want to understand sort of why that's so important. So if someone tells
Just
you...
to sort of understand reality, you know?
Well, I mean, I think when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them. So if a person says that they're a woman or they're a man, then that's them telling you their gender is. I'm not so sure what social interactions would have to do with maleness or femaleness that would be...
I'm not even talking about social context. I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language of like getting to the truth. Again, in social life...
Why is that uncomfortable?
Because it sounds actually deeply transphobic to me. And if you keep probing, we're gonna stop the interview.
If I probe about what the truth is?
You keep invoking the word truth, which is condescending and rude. I'm saying to you...
How is the word truth condescending and rude?
Why don't you tell me what your truth is, and you're walking on 30 seconds more of thin ice before I get up.
What my truth is? Well, I don't think I really have a truth. I think that there's just the truth, like the reality. And so we should begin by trying to figure out what the reality is.
Uh-huh. And why are you concerned with when someone else tells you that they're a man, or even if they use the word male, why are you concerned with not believing them?
Well, you keep bringing it back to, how do you respond in a social situation? But,
that's what I do. I'm a social scientist.
Well, right, but we're in a university. This is a place of understanding truth, isn't it? Or
absolutely. We pursue truth, and I'm a social scientist, and that's what I do.
But you just said the truth is transphobic.
That you would say, if you're saying the truth is that I get to say, you're not a man, show me your genitalia, that's transphobic.
No, I don't want to see anybody's genitalia. I just mean, someone can make a statement about themselves that could be untrue. Like, for example, if I were to say that I'm a black man, would you accept that, or would you be skeptical?
Are you black? Are you African American? Are you biracial?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, you don't look that, and I don't think it doesn't sound like that's a genuine statement of who you are.
Okay, so that's my point. I could make a statement about who I am that's incorrect.
Of course, I think it's well established that human beings can lie, yes.
Or not even lie. I mean, I could just be mistaken.
Yeah.
I guess
you know exactly where he's going. You know exactly where he's going. You know exactly where he's going. Because you're not a stupid person. You've tricked yourself into believing a lot of things that are weird, but you know exactly where he's going. A person could not be telling the truth. A person could be mistaken. I'm not sure where you're going. You know exactly where he's going. If a person's statements about themselves could be mistaken, then we have to at least entertain the possibility. We have to at least entertain the possibility that if a person says, I am a woman, they might be mistaken. They might be wrong. You know exactly where this is going.
I guess this all comes back, it all comes down to really one question. Especially women, gender and sexuality studies. So what is a woman?
Why do you ask that question?
I just really like to know.
What do you think the answer to that question is?
Well, I'm asking. That's why I came to a college professor who's this is what you do.
What other kinds of answers have you gotten?
a lot of like this where you're not answering, and I've gotten a lot of that. So
I think it's interesting that you say that some of the people you've interviewed have been reluctant to answer it, and I think that has a lot to do with the questions that preceded it and the way that you've conducted yourself in the interview.
How have I conducted myself?
How do you think you've conducted yourself?
You just really don't want to answer the questions, do you?
I came today very willing and enthusiastic about answering questions about women's and gender sexuality studies, which is the work that I do.
You wanted to answer questions about women's studies, and so shouldn't the first answer you should be able to provide is what exactly is a woman?
Well, for me, it's actually a really simple answer, and that's a person who identifies as a woman.
But what are they identifying as?
As a woman.
But what is that?
As a woman.
Do you know what a circular definition is?
I do.
It's sort of like what you're doing right now, where a woman is a woman.
Mm-hmm. Well, because you're seeking what we would call in my field of work an essentialist definition of gender. I think it sounds like you would like me to give you a set of biological or cultural characteristics that are associated with one gender or the other.
I'm not seeking any type of definition. I'm just seeking a definition.
Yeah, and I gave you one.
No, you really didn't. You gave a circular. Woman means woman. You didn't give a definition. It's like you're seeking an essentialist definition. I'm like, so I'm just seeking a definition of any variety. It's like I need to, once again, it's like I need to be able to define the set. I need to be able to define the category, at least somewhat, so that I know what things belong and what don't belong in the category. Right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% perfect. I mean, 100% perfect would be nice. But, if it works, it has to work at least enough to be useful. Right? It has to work enough to be useful. So, I'll take a 95% definition as a starting point, and maybe we could work from there. It's like a woman's a woman. I've given you a definition. No. Also, I object to the concept of truth itself, which is an interesting proposition for really anyone, or a professor in particular. It's like I object to the definition of truth. You're being condescending, and I'm going to walk out of this interview if you keep pushing for the question of what is truth. Wow, because it's transphobic, which is just a label we get to put on a thing when we don't want to have the discussion, right? It's just a label that we don't want to put on the thing. Yeah. Yeah, this is fun.
Well, now I can say I've been to college. Glad I didn't pay for it. Is there anyone willing to give me a straight answer? Ideally, somebody with a bunch of medical degrees on the wall. Dr. Grossman, thanks for talking to us. You're a psychiatrist, medical doctor, and you've done a lot of work in child psychiatry. What is transgenderism from a psychiatric standpoint?
The best way to approach it is by speaking about gender dysphoria, which is an intense loathing and discomfort with one's biological sex. They exist anywhere between 1 in 30,000 people and 1 in 110,000. It's important to distinguish those people from what's happening much more recently, which is
even at 1 in 30,000, which is their high end, right? So like if it's 1 in 30,000, your average college would have 1. I mean, there's not a lot of colleges out there with much more than that in terms of population. So even if it's as frequent as 1 in 30,000, why are colleges this confused? Because it would be literally a person. 1 in the entire college. It would be 1 person every 4 years, give or take. Because that's roughly the population of a college, give or take. In the largest football stadiums in the country, it would be like 4 4 people in the entire stadium. And that's the high end estimate. In the low end estimate, it'd be a person in the largest college stadiums, the largest sports arenas in our country. I think the biggest one, it holds like 130,000, something like that. The biggest sports arena in the country, or at least one of the biggest. And we're talking about somewhere between a person and 4 people in the entire stadium. And we're this confused over this? Holy shit, dude.
Kids that never had any discomfort or dysphoria, as it's now called, with their biological sex. And then quite suddenly, as preteens or as adolescents, they come out and they announce that they are gender fluid, or they start to question their sex. So first, let's define the terms, sex and gender.
Yes, please.
Sex is biology. Sex is unchanging. It's based on chromosomes. 99.999% of the cells in the body are marked either male or female. Gender, on the other hand, is a perception. It's a feeling. It's a way of identifying. It's an experience. Okay, that's subjective.
It sounds like what you're saying is that if a man is male but thinks of himself as a woman, he's not actually a woman?
That's correct.
Male gametes. That's what makes me male.
No, your sperm don't make you male.
Then what does?
It's a constellation.
In reality, in truth, okay?
Whose truth are we talking about?
The same truth that says we're sitting in this room right now, you and I.
No, you're not listening.
If I see a chicken laying eggs and I say that's a female chicken laying eggs, did I assign female, or am I just observing a physical reality that's happening in the world?
Does a chicken have gender identity? Does a chicken cry?
Well,
Does a chicken commit suicide? Let's
What does that have to do
frame
with-
it, because you're
Those questions are irrelevant. First of all, I don't know whether a chicken does or not. I can't speak to the internal mental state of the chicken. So I don't know whether or not they do or not. But regardless of whether they do or not, it doesn't matter. Right? So, because there's an external reality that is independent and apart from the chicken's mental state. Also, what is a chicken?
The chicken has sex like any biological
chicken has
organism.
an assigned gender, but a chicken doesn't have a gender identity.
So we assign female to chickens when they lay eggs?
We assume they're female if they lay eggs.
Now, I was told that really everyone agrees.
We assume the chicken is female if it lays eggs. This is a new and exciting reality that we're in. Why did the chicken cross the road? Why do you ask? Why do you ask why the chicken crossed the road? Why do you ask the question? Wow. This is making jokes a lot more interesting. Why did the chicken cross the road? Why do you ask? Exciting.
Agrees with the current approach to gender and transitioning kids and all of that. And if you don't agree, that you're a dinosaur and a bigot. So are you a bigoted dinosaur?
I'm not bigoted and I'm not a dinosaur. I am rooted in reality and in science.
Whose reality?
There's one reality.
The first race that I competed against a transgender athlete was during my freshman year. And once the gun went off, the 2 transgender athletes took off flying and left all of us girls in the dust. Throughout all 4 years of high school, I was forced to compete against biological males. I only competed against them in the sprinting events. but I raced against these athletes over a dozen times throughout the years, and every single time I lost.
Did they inch you out of medals that you would have won otherwise, or trophies you would have
They
won?
beat me out by 20 meters out of medals, and qualifying spots. I missed out on qualifying for New England's. I had to go in the long jump and the 4x200 meter relay, so I was forced on the sidelines in my own event, and if they were not there, I would have been able to qualify. So I missed out on so much throughout my high school career.
Did they win all the events or almost all the events?
Between the two of them, they won every single event they competed in.
How does that feel?
It is so frustrating and heartbreaking because we elite female athletes train so hard to shave just fractions of a second off of our time. And going into races knowing that we will never be able to win.
Feels like all that work gone to waste?
It does. After so many losses, it just gets to the point of, why am I even doing this? Why am I keep training so hard and sacrificing so much just to place third and beyond?
They were trans girls.
Right, and who decided that they were going to race against the girls. And you look at those individuals, you look at their times against the men, against the boys, so they were kind of middle of the pack. And then they're racing the girls, and they're, first and second place. Is that indicative of some kind of unfair advantage that those individuals might have against the girls?
No, it's not indicative of an unfair advantage. And I think part of the proof of this is that more transgender girls are coming out in high school and still playing sports, and they're not winning. The Connecticut case is the exception. It got a lot of attention because those two trans girls performed well, but there are many, many more trans girls competing in sports, and they don't excel.
Yeah,
because at the end of the day, whether or not you win a game is about how hard you work in your practice, and most of us aren't going to win. And that goes for transgender athletes too.
Let's go, girls.
The norm is that transgender youth don't win that much in sports games.
Alana McLaughlin was very appreciative for Provost to take this fight. I don't know how appreciative it is now, but she got a couple punches in.
It is very much the exception when a transgender young person does win.
And the tap!
And it's because there's not really an advantage to being trans. Only a few people are going to lead the pack.
Look
There
at
are
that.
some slight differences, but does it translate to a competitive advantage? I think you'd be very hard-pressed to prove that.
If there was a big advantage to being transgender in sports, then we would see transgender women totally dominate.
And over the last half of the pool, nobody will touch Leah Thomas.
Man, I feel like a woman.
Transgender swimmer Leah Thomas breaking barriers and records. But in
Dude, it's so messed up. It's so disturbing. This is so wrong. It is so wrong. And I don't know. On some level, I feel like I just don't understand why myself and people who are on the other side of this see things so incredibly differently. It's like we are so far apart. It is mind-blowing to me. It's like, how can we possibly be this far apart in our perceptions and in our conclusions? It's like you get into your head about the whole thing, especially if you are a thinking person, as I like to think that I'm a thinking person, right? I like to think, and maybe it's ego, and maybe it's self-aggrandizement, and maybe it's self-delusion, and maybe it's a lot of things. But I'd like to think that I'm a pretty thinking person. I mean, I've been accused throughout my life, especially by my own mother, who I dearly love, of overthinking and thinking way too much and just not, and being overly analytical. And like the biggest criticism that can be, I think the biggest single criticism that can be had of me as a person is fundamentally that I'm too analytical and lean too much into the analytical. It is a strength of mine. And throughout my life, I have leaned into it so hard that I have perhaps neglected emotion. And that isn't to say that I'm unemotional, because that's not true. I wear my heart on my sleeve. People know that. But that I am so analytical and so thinking. And I read like crazy. I read court cases like crazy. I went to 8 years of college. I got 2 undergrad degrees, political science and computer science. Read philosophy, read law, read books, read lots of things, and I overthink. And sometimes I think perhaps like it came at the expense somewhat of just perhaps even social interactions, because I don't maybe have as much social awareness or as many social skills as perhaps some people do, because I lean so hard into the analytical that perhaps neglecting some of those aspects. So I think that's sort of the biggest criticism that could be had about me as a person, is that I am so analytical and very sort of purposefully leaned into the analytical and overthink everything. So it's like when you see this and we're so far apart, you can't at least I can't help getting into my head a little bit about it. Because it's like part of me thinks like, where did I go wrong? Right? If my conclusions that I have are so broken by comparison to what the other side says, because the other side says my conclusions are so broken. It's like, what does that say about my intellect itself? What does it say about my own ability to think through things? Where have I gone wrong? And how are we coming to these incredibly disparate conclusions? Is just like you get into a little bit of existential crisis a little bit about it. It's like, just where have we gone wrong that we are reaching such incredibly weird conclusions? And I see this, and I see these men competing as women, and I'm like, every fiber of my being tells me this is wrong. This is wrong. This should not be allowed. And people are like, not only should this be allowed, this should be celebrated. I'm like, where are we going wrong in this equation? Something is wrong here. And I can't see, but it's like I see this, and I'm like, this is just fundamentally wrong. This should not be allowed. This is a perversion. This is a perversion. This is evil. That these men are allowed to compete with these women and deprive the women of their justly earned opportunities to compete in the sports that they have dedicated themselves so much to. This is just wrong. And it's like, carrying on before I get too much in my own head about the whole thing.
A new article, Sports Illustrated calls the college senior the most controversial athlete in America.
Leah obviously helps us do better, right? Leah's swimming really fast. Leah's performance helps the University of Pennsylvania swim team. The feeling of winning doesn't feel as good anymore because it feels tainted. There was a lot of things you couldn't talk about that were very concerning, like a locker room situation. If you even brought up concerns about it, you were transphobic. If you even bring up the fact that Leah swimming might not be fair, you were immediately shut down as being called a hateful person or transphobic.
But there's never any conversation. The coaches don't sit everyone down and acknowledge what everyone's really upset about.
So Penn actually brought in people high up in the athletic department to talk to us. They brought in someone from like the LGBTQ center. They brought in someone from the psychological services.
So you're upset about what's happening, and so you need psychological help.
Yeah, and they told us in this meeting, they said, look, We understand there's an array of emotions, but Leah's swimming is a non-negotiable. However, we can help you make that okay. That's what we're here for.
So you're anonymous for this interview. Why did you decide that you can't have your face out there saying these things?
They've made it pretty clear that if you speak up about it and you say anything negative, that like your life will be over in some way. Like you'll be blasted all over the internet as a transphobe if you come out, and then you'll never be able to get a job. Like anyone who wants to hire you will look you up and see you're transphobic and your life will be over.
Let's say that I identified as a woman tomorrow and I wanted to go into the same locker room where you are. Should I be allowed to do that? As long as I identify that way?
I don't know. I just feel that other women would be uncomfortable by you walking in there.
Ella dice que qué tú piensas acerca de que los hombres que son transexuales usen baños de mujeres. ¿Tú crees que está bien? No. Pero dilo.
No, ¿qué tiene que ver?
Controversy at a health club in Koreatown over the issue of gender.
That's right. Video of spa goers complaining was posted on social media.
I just want to be clear with you. It's okay for a man to go into the women's section, show his penis around the other women, young little girls underage. Your spa, we spa, condone that. Is that what you're saying? Like I asked. It's so he can stay there. He can stay there? What sexual orientation? I see a dick.
Police identified the person involved as 52-year-old Darren Morager of Riverside County. Morager, who has been a registered sex offender since 2006. Now faces 5 felony counts of indecent exposure.
Hello, I'm Congressman Mark Takano. Trans Month of Visibility is a time to recognize the strength, diversity, and resiliency of the transgender community. Together, we can make our country and our world a more accepting place by speaking out against transphobia at the source and supporting the trans community by getting the Equality Act signed into law.
Congressman, thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. You are the first member of Congress who's a member of the LGBT community and also a person of Asian descent. You're also a big proponent of the Equality Act.
Yes.
What is the Equality Act? If you were to just summarize it very briefly, I know it does a lot.
The most simplest way to talk about the Equality Act is that it simply amends the 1964 Civil Rights Act to include sexual orientation and gender identity. So public accommodations is one area.
What's a way that someone who's LGBT could be discriminated in public accommodations currently?
Currently, public accommodations is the whole area of, hotels and motels and
bathrooms and sports teams. Is that?
I say bathrooms, sports teams, athletic events.
Let's get into more specific policy issues. There are some women who say, and I've talked to a few who say this. They say, hey, I'd like some privacy in the bathroom. I'd prefer not to encounter naked penises, frankly. They say even that the penis is a telltale sign that someone is a male. I mean, there are people who've kind of really bought into the rumor that only men have penises. How do we account for that? How do you respond to that?
Well, what I would say is that most transgender people that I know, and it's a very, I think, distinct minority of people. It is a very, I think, we're talking not about a lot of people. I think a person who wants to use a woman's bathroom, who identifies as transgender, really does think of themselves as a female. So how we go about trying to, respect their basic right to live, I think will be an important part of this law. And
With the
bathrooms,
law-
well, wait a minute, bathrooms are, you know, where you want to take this conversation instead of the basic right to just life is something that I'm kind of mystified that you're kind of not focusing on first, that we're going straight to the controversy over bathrooms. So, you know what? I think this interview is over.
Yeah.
I think this interview is over.
I just had one last question.
No, the interview's over.
We
Please
want
turn
to
off
know
the cameras.
what is a woman?
Please turn off the cameras.
Excuse me. So we're gonna end the interview. If you guys could please pack up and return the office exactly.
I just wanted to know.
Okay.
I came all this way to know what. They're fair questions. I just wanted to know what is a woman.
And you're not gonna find out.
We couldn't get anywhere on the interview. That's just amazing. Like you couldn't. It's like there are some people who are uncomfortable with this. What do we say? Well, how about the bicycle like to live? We won't answer any questions about it, and we're not going to find out what a woman is. Dude, like a congressman is proposing a bill to change the law. Okay. All right. There are some people, your proposal would allow biological males to go into changing rooms with women. Some women are opposed to that. What do you say to that issue? Why are you focusing on that issue as opposed to their right to live? Well, because this is a law. The law would have legal consequences. This would allow for this scenario to occur. Some of your constituents are opposed to it for this reason. What is your answer to that? And it's like, well, the interview's over. I just want to ask what a woman is. Well, you're not going to get an answer. This is so incredibly. I keep trying to poke at my own thinking and keep trying to poke at my own reasoning, and I'm like,
My trip to California isn't providing many answers, but at least I'm making new friends. You worry about kids walking around out here?
No, because I raised two daughters. They're two of the most well-adjusted adults. They grew up around naked people, and there's been studies that have shown that children raised around non-sexual nudity actually have fewer hang-ups when they're adults.
People do have hang-ups. There's a lot of things hanging right now during this conversation. Can anyone be any gender they want to be? Can a man become a woman if he wants to be?
I leave that, I mean, what people do, that's personal choice. People can live the life they want to. I'm trying to live the life I want to, an authentic life, and
I can see
that's
that.
why I respect other people's rights and to choose what they want to do.
Well, why are you asking a gay man as to what it means to be a woman? You should be asking women what it means to be a woman, especially trans women, what it means to be a woman.
I'm asking all kinds of people. Can anyone have an opinion about it?
Only people who are women. Gay men don't know nothing about what it means to be a woman.
Have you told gay men here in San Francisco that they're not allowed to talk about this?
No. But it's not like I come around and say what a gay man is allowed to be.
So you're saying if you're not a woman, then you shouldn't have an opinion?
Where does a guy get a right to say what a woman is? Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is?
This is actually a genuine mistake. I am sorry I even came up there.
Only a woman can say what a woman is. Are you a cat? No. Can you answer it? Oh, this is a mistake. I want to watch that last bit again because it's just that was cute. Hold on.
Can anyone have an opinion about it?
Only people who are women. Gay men don't know nothing about what it means to be a woman.
Have you told gay men here in San Francisco that they're not allowed to talk about this?
No. But it's not like I come around and say what a gay man is allowed to be.
So you're saying if you're not a woman, then you shouldn't have an opinion.
Where does a guy get a right to say what a woman is? Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is?
And the contradiction is made manifest, my friends. The contradiction is made manifest.
This is actually a genuine mistake. I am sorry I even came up here.
You want to tell us what a woman is? If my friend in the purple hat is correct, and only women can tell me what a woman is, I guess I need to go where the women are. What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. So, I see girls, vagina. Does that mean that they're the only people who can get pregnant?
If men can get pregnant too, I think they'd want the right to choose.
But men can get pregnant?
We're saying someone who was born as a woman but identifies as a man.
That a man?
Real man.
It's a real man.
Yeah.
So men can get pregnant.
Yes, if we're saying yes.
If they have the parts to do so.
Is it just women that give birth, or is it?
Or I guess, yeah.
So men can give birth too?
Anyone with a vagina.
But that could be a man or a woman.
Well, I mean, I think that's the whole point, right? That it's fluid. The way that we define these things changes a lot.
What are you doing here?
I'm asking these questions.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out what a woman is. That's why I'm here. And this is the Women's March. I figured this is a good place to find out. I've come all this way to ask that question. Can anyone tell me what a woman is?
You are not here for women. We ask you to leave.
What is that? How am I harassing? I'm asking a question.
Our bodies, our choice.
Whose body?
Our bodies, our choice. Our bodies, our choice.
What is a woman? Can anyone here at the Women's March tell me what a woman is? How about you tell me what a woman is and I'll put a mask on? Sir, tell me what a woman is and I'll put a mask on. Please, if one person could tell me what a woman is. Do you guys know what a woman is by any chance?
No idea.
I've been all over America.
Dude. We go to the Women's March and we can't get people to tell us what a woman is. This is the Women's March, right? Okay, what are we marching for? Women. Okay, what is that? What is that? What are we marching for? You literally have no idea what you're marching for. You have no idea what you're marching for because you can't define what the thing is. You gotta be. This is okay. This is. I don't know where to start and stop. This is hurting my brain. It's hurting my brain parts.
I still can't find an answer. Maybe I'm looking too close to home. Came a long way to come and talk to you guys, thousands of miles from America. So thank you for inviting us into your tribe, first of all.
I can say it is my pleasure to meet you.
and feel most welcome. But you're here to learn with me. I'm here to learn with you too.
Great. What's the right form here?
It's just
with the elbow?
Yeah.
I mean, they're laughing, so I guess it's not good, but I thought it was pretty good. Not good enough to be a man yet in your tribe, but what does a man do? What are his roles within the tribe?
At the role of a man, you need to work for your woman. Secondly, to have children. If you have children and you don't have something to feed them, you are not still a man. Okay,
there you go. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the blood.
This is the best raw kidney I've had in my life. What if a man decides that he wants to do the roles of a woman?
Kidogro orna yende hikunya lele aines ndogringen gro. In Maasai community, it will not exist at all.
Doesn't exist? What if a man decides that his gender identity is woman?
Kidogro orna yende le nega wanana ingro. A woman has its own duty, and a man has its own duty, and a lady cannot do the duty of a man, and a man cannot do a duty of a woman.
Can a man become a woman?
No.
No?
No.
What about a transgender?
Okay.
Transgender?
No.
No?
It will look like if you want to become a lady but you're a man, you have something wrong in your mind. Something wrong in your family, something wrong in you.
What about if someone was non-binary?
Come again?
Non-binary? Do you know, like someone is
you're not a woman, you're not a man.
Yeah, someone is neither. There's something else. Is that?
He's saying we have never seen things like those. For a man, he has a penis. For a woman, he has a vagina.
Wow. Wow, we got pretty good answers over here from the tribesmen. We've got pretty good answers over here from the tribesmen. It's the same answer from kindergarten cop, man. The same answer from kindergarten cop. Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. I suppose kindergarten cop cannot be filmed today because that scene would have to have Billy over there or whatever his name was in the movie. Not sure what the kid's name is. Sorry about that part. I'm going to call him Billy though. We can't have Billy saying that. I'm surprised kindergarten cop is allowed to still exist. Maybe we need to edit out that scene because no, Billy, that's not right. We need to have things, but tribesmen over here think it might be that simple, but maybe that's because they're part of the ancient dinosaurs and they're behind in the times. Good shit.
So we know this is a lady, this is a man.
What if it's a woman with a penis?
Both.
Is that? People are laughing. Is that a dumb question?
They're just laughing because they have never heard something like that. This is their first time to hear.
Never heard it before.
A woman have a penis, and she is a woman.
In my country, I can't go a day without hearing it. We hear it every day. So in my country, sometimes you'll hear people say, a man will say that I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, and so they say that I have a woman trapped inside me.
Iriana rokina idimolle ara ingiro. They want to know a woman has the breast.
Breast. Yeah.
Secondly, she has a vagina.
Vagina.
And the question is, does this man deliver?
Does he deliver babies? No, not as far as I know.
The question is, let's say if you want to sleep a woman, definitely you'll do sex.
Sex with a woman, yeah.
And you the vagina, is it? But for the man, where do you He asked that question.
I don't know all the logistics of it. Based on what I'm saying, would you ever want to move to America?
They said no, never.
What is a woman if you had to give it a definition?
She's saying a woman delivered, a man cannot.
So it sounds like you don't spend a lot of time thinking about gender. You just kind of live your lives. You don't think much about it.
He said no, because we believe that's a God plan.
God's plan?
He's saying that I'm shocked on what you are telling me.
He's shocked?
Yeah.
I share the tribe's confusion. I also feel for the translator trying to it's like, what are you saying now? And you want me to translate this into my language? It's like you're asking questions and concepts that make no sense, but I'll translate your gibberish into my language anyway. I feel for you. I'm a pretty well-educated person. I understand the English language pretty well, and I'm not much less confused than the tribesmen over here. I feel your pain.
The Maasai people don't think much about gender, but they have a firm sense of their identity. It's clear that gender ideology is a uniquely Western phenomenon. So where did all this come from? Who came?
French. Goddamn French.
Matt, I want to show this to you. You're a parent, right? Okay? It's perfectly normal for 10 years and up. Here's just one page I want you to see here.
For 10 and up, huh?
It's unspeakable what these people have done to our children.
When did that start? When was it decided that we need to start teaching kids about this stuff at such a young age?
So I'll answer that with one word: Kinsey. Kinsey was a social reformer. He wanted to rid society of Judeo-Christian values when it came to sexuality. And he worked very hard to do that, and I would say he succeeded.
Kinsey would be very happy with our culture today. His idea was that children are sexual from birth, that we're all inherently sexual creatures from cradle to grave. He believed that true happiness is found in a life of perverse sexual experimentation, no matter the age.
What came out is that his research was fraudulent.
Kinsey based his fraudulent conclusions on data he collected from convicted sex offenders and child molesters. His research was conducted in prisons, not everyday America. He also performed horrific sexual experiments on children, some under the age of 1. His most influential book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, contains an infamous chart called Table 34, which documents the orgasms of very young kids, including babies as young as 5 months old.
I really wish I hadn't been consuming food at the exact second that was on screen. That was a mistake.
But instead of suffering the consequences for his heinous actions, he was and still is celebrated by academia and Hollywood. His ideas form the foundation for sexual education in public schools today. How do we get from this to you can choose your own gender?
Okay, well, now we have another very important character, and his name was John Money.
John Money was a psychologist and professor at Johns Hopkins University. Gender ideology was his brainchild. In fact, he coined the terms gender identity and gender roles. And according to Money, babies are gender neutral at birth. And ultimately, environment determines whether a person is a man or a woman.
Money was telling the world about his theory that a boy could be raised as a girl and do just fine, and vice versa.
And so Money tried out his theory on two young twin boys, the Reimer twins.
When the twins were 8 months old and they went to be circumcised, the first twin, whose name was Bruce, something went wrong with the machinery and his penis was burnt off. They stopped and didn't do a second circumcision on the other twin, as you might imagine. And the parents, of course, didn't know what to do. How are they going to raise this child?
John Money convinced Bruce's parents to transition him into a girl. Money also conducted sexually abusive experiments on the twins throughout their childhood, including forcing them to simulate sex acts on each other.
He reported up to the age of 10 that this was a complete success. Well, wasn't true.
It was not.
The results were a disaster. Bruce could never fully accept his female identity. Eventually, his parents told him the truth, and he chose to transition back to a boy, taking the name David. As an adult, David spoke out about the abuse and the damage done to him by John Money.
The girls would do their things with their Barbies and things like that, and that wouldn't interest me. And things such as trucks and building forts and, getting into the odd fist fight and climbing trees, that's the kind of stuff that I like, but it was unacceptable, so I'd never...
As a girl?
As a girl, I had no place to fit in.
The trauma that he and his brother and his entire family went through left deep scars. His brother died of an overdose when he was 38, and then David committed suicide.
Yeah.
There was never a retraction.
Not the first time I'm hearing that story, unfortunately. Not the first time I'm hearing that story, unfortunately. Yeah, this poor infant male had his genitalia burnt off. And they tried to raise him essentially from birth as a girl. And socialize him as a girl and sexualize him as a girl. And yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened. Yep. Pretty messed up.
Or an apology from John Money. Instead, his ideas were adopted by mainstream psychology, and they form the basis of gender ideology today. Why don't more people know about John Money and Alfred Kinsey?
Evidently, there are forces that don't want this information out.
I never fit. I was an alpha female, a sales executive that kind of just didn't fit in any box. When psychologists or somebody that I was in love with or whatever said that I was in the wrong body, I started to think, well, maybe I am. I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male through synthetic hormones and surgery. I will never be a man. Is it transphobic for me to tell the truth? Why is it that a couple hundred years from now, if you dug up my body, they're gonna go, yeah, that was a woman, had babies.
Can you tell me about the procedures that you had?
I've had 7 surgeries. I've had 1 stress heart attack. I've had a helicopter life ride with a pulmonary embolism. I've had 17 rounds of antibiotics. I had 6 inches of hair on the inside of my urethra for 17 months. Nobody would help me, including the doctor that did this to me because I lost my insurance. I get infections every 3 to 4 months. I'm probably not gonna live very long.
Was there any real discussion of the risks and the side effects and...
No, there's not. And I know that people want to think that there is, but there's not. The truth is that medical transition is experimental. We have studies that said that medical transition helps mental health with kids. They've all been retracted, modified, changed. But the only long-term study tells us 7 to 10 years is when transgender people are the most suicidal.
After?
After surgery. But that's transphobic to say. For the first time in history, a marginalized group has a huge dollar sign on the top of their head. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States promoting that.
Oof.
And what?
That's a phalloplasty. That's a bottom surgery. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States telling girls that they can be boys at $70,000 a pop in a surgery that has a 67% complication rate. That will kill me from infection, that I can't sue on. We're butchering a generation of children because nobody's willing to talk about anything. I have 3 kids. At the age that they're doing this to kids. I'm not transphobic. I love my kids, and I love other people's kids, and you should too. This is wrong on so many levels.
Can kids consent? Do you think kids are capable of consenting to this?
No, they're not. Being a parent is loving the hell out of your kids and helping them see around corners.
What's the youngest patient that you've operated on?
The youngest patient I've done vaginoplasty on is age 16.
Do you worry that minors just don't understand enough about themselves? They're not neurologically developed enough yet to make permanent life-altering decisions?
Absolutely not.
A young person's self-perception, one day they may be clear, the next day they may be totally confused and not sure, and you're affirming it with hormones that have never been used in this way in the field of medicine.
You're talking about puberty blockers?
Blockers and then opposite sex hormones.
At what age does the medical transition begin with medication?
So medical affirmation begins when the patient says they're ready for it. So that could be a kiddo who is just starting puberty and panicking because they're getting breast buds or their penis is getting bigger and busier and they're worried about all kinds of masculine changes. And that way, puberty blockers, which are completely reversible and don't have permanent effects, are wonderful because we can put that pause on puberty. Just like if you were listening to music, you put the pause on and we stop the blockers and puberty would go right back to where it was. The next note in the song just delayed that period of time.
You can just pause puberty.
No, you can't.
And then pick it up?
No, you can't.
In the future?
No, you can't. How many studies do they have, long-term studies, on hormone blockers with children? None.
I just spoke a month or 2 ago with a mother whose 14-year-old daughter was put on blockers. They discovered after 2 years, this 14-year-old girl has osteoporosis. That's something that like old women get.
How can doctors assure parents that a certain medicine is totally safe if, based on what you're saying, they can't possibly know that?
How can they be removing the healthy breasts of 15-year-old girls? How can they be sterilizing kids? How can this whole thing be happening, Matt?
Every child that they convince is transgender and in need of medical transition, it generates $1.3 million to pharma. And we're believing a pharmaceutical company, Lupron, hormone blockers, reversible, so they say. Well, the truth is that in 2003, Lupron was sued and deemed a criminal enterprise by the US government. They paid the most fine of any pharmaceutical company at that time, $874 million, wrote a check.
Is Lupron chemical castration?
Yes. We're giving it to pedophiles, aren't we? We're giving it to people that are dying, and we're giving it to kids, telling them that they were born in the wrong body and it's completely safe.
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right? Which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders?
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview because it seems like it's going in a particular direction.
Well, you're a medical professional.
I am a medical professional.
So So you don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids, or?
Again, I'm a physician and I use medication. You're choosing.
Dictionary.
That's not a correct term for puberty blocking in a
I could like look it
transgender
up on my
person.
phone, but I'm pretty sure if I looked it up, like
You can look it up on your phone.
it says medical definition, the administration of a drug to bring about a marked reduction in the body's production of androgens and especially testosterone.
And I'm saying, as a pediatrician who takes care of hundreds of these kids, when you use that terminology, you are being malignant and harmful.
I mean, there are some who would say that giving chemical castration drugs to kids is malignant and harmful.
It's about the context of caring for a child and seeing the suffering that kids can have that have not been in affirmative home situations.
What do you say to the claim that, well, we have to do this for these?
I don't know I don't know fully how to respond to that interaction we just had. It's like you're using words in a malignant way. That's not what it is. Well, let me just look it up in the dictionary. Here's what it says in the dictionary. That's what we're doing. That's just the dictionary definition things. Well, you're using them in a malignant way. You're using them in a bigoted way. It's just words. The words have meanings. It is chemical castration. That is exactly what you're doing, according to the definition. Well, I'm a pediatrician, and it's about the context of these things. You know, when we're using it for the good. So, okay. All right. Dude, this is so incredibly fucked up on so many levels. I mean, you know, not that I need to say it, but you know, in case it wasn't obvious, yeah, I don't support any of this gender, transgender redefinitions stuff. It doesn't make any, it is illogical. It is illogical. And I'm an analytical guy. I need it to make logical sense. Like sometimes you guys say to me about law, make it make sense, right? And I'm like, well, that's what I try to do all the time when it comes to my legal education. I try to make it make sense. And I don't necessarily agree with the things, but I try to explain it as best as I know how. And I have over 2,000 videos trying to make it make sense because I'm an analytical guy, right? And at least it makes sense to me, you know, for the most part. It makes sense to me. And because it is a human created discipline, because it's a human invented discipline, it does have contradictions, right? Law is not based on nature. It is based on, it is a societal construct. It is a societal construct. It's something that humans have created. And so it has some flaws along the way, but you know, some of those flaws have been tempered out because we've been doing this for a long time. And so some of those flaws have been tempered out. So, you know, most of the time I can make it make sense. And every once in a while, you know, even parts I disagree with, I can explain the rationale for it. And they'd be like, I don't agree with the rationale. So can I explain Wickard? Yes, I can. I can explain Wickard. Can I explain Chevron versus NRDC? Yes, I can. I can explain it. I can explain exactly why they did it. I can explain exactly the rationale behind it. I can even explain how it kind of makes sense. And then I understand how it breaks and why it doesn't work. And I can explain all of it because I've been doing this for a long time. But here, we don't even have that problem because we're basing it off of biology, right? That's the difference between law and this. This, when it comes to transgender, we're talking about a biological, natural reality. This isn't something that humans completely invented. It isn't something that we just made up and we're all dancing on the head of a pin. You know, it isn't something that's just completely a made-up universe. We can't redefine underlying realities. We can't redefine underlying biologies. And the fact that we're trying to, and the fact that we're ignoring the biology, and the fact that we're ignoring obvious truths is incredibly frustrating, especially to a logician like me, because I can't make it work. I can't make it work. I keep trying to take all this transgender stuff that these people are talking about. And I keep trying to make it work in a logically cohesive way, and I can't do it. I can't make it work because it doesn't make sense. And you're beginning to see why it doesn't make sense, because when you try to pin things down, you start to run into contradictions. The contradictions start to expose themselves. And there's only so much, cognitive dissonance that you can accept before the whole thing breaks. I don't need it to be perfect. I can understand a little bit of things where things are a little bit, things are a little bit in the unknown. We don't quite understand this. And I can also understand the limits of science to the degree it exists. For example, in physics, with the whole dark energy thing. Dark energy and dark matter is a whole big ass question mark. We have no effing clue what's going on. But we know we don't have any effing clue what's going on. We know there's a problem. We don't have any clue what the nature of the problem is. We've come up with this idea of dark energy, dark matter, but it's a complete goddamn guess. And maybe it's correct and maybe not, but we have no clue right now. But we know that we don't know. And we're looking for the answer. Maybe we'll figure it out someday, as we figured out past mysteries in our realities, like the orbits of the sun, orbits of the planets. That was a mystery for a long time. Figured that one out. Why does the tide work? Why are tides a thing? That was a mystery for a long time. Figured that one out. Maybe we'll figure out the dark matter, dark energy thing someday too. But the fact that this would be the rough equivalent of just completely denying that, there's too much gravity in the universe for the amount of matter that there is. Because there's too much gravity. There's too much gravity for the amount of matter that exists in the universe by a lot. And it would just be like, oh no, that's not true. There's not too much gravity. There is too much gravity. So something is wrong here. Something is wrong. Either there is stuff we can't detect, or our theory of gravity is somehow fundamentally wrong, or the gravity is somehow coming from outside the universe, or some other explanation we haven't yet divined. But this is just straight denial. Well, there's not too much gravity. There's too much gravity. There's just this. This is the same thing. It's just denying fundamental biological realities. And this isn't that confusing, because these are not part of the grand mysteries of the universe. Men and women are not part of the grand universe mysteries. These are things we figured out long ago, my friend. They're things the chickens figured out. The chickens figured it out. I think we can figure it out, Unless you're saying we're not as smart as chickens. Brother Daniel says the laws of physics are local. Hey, there you go. That works. Yeah. Maybe the laws of physics are different in different places of the universe. That maybe. Yeah, that could be true. Maybe the laws of physics are different. Yeah, that could be. But why can't we just acknowledge that there is a fundamental reality here? And why are we denying fundamental reality? And this is pissing me off. All right, great.
These kids, because if we don't,
I want to make
they'll kill themselves. They'll resort to drugs and self-harm.
You didn't know about the too much gravity thing? Oh yeah, no, this is the entire. Do we want to have a discussion on physics for a second? Let's have a discussion on physics for a second. Yeah, there's too much gravity in the universe by a lot. Because the equation for gravity is pretty simple. You take the mass. The equation for gravity is very simple. You have mass 1, mass 2, the distance between the two objects squared, and a gravitational constant, which we kind of invented to make the numbers work, right? So how much gravity should there be between object 1 and object 2? Really easy. Do you know the mass of object 1? Do you know the mass of object 2? Do you know how far apart they are? Great. Plug it into the equation, bingo bango, you got how much gravity there should be. Really easy. Really easy, and it works. It works all the time. But then suddenly we start observing galaxies, and we start, we get these wonderful telescopes that allow us to observe galaxies, and superclusters and the universe itself and how it's stuff, and we're like, hey, wait a second, that shouldn't be, right? That shouldn't be. Like, if the planets should be orbiting the suns at this speed, or the entire solar system should be orbiting the center of the galaxy this speed, right? Like a record, right? Because the further you're out from the center, the faster you need to move, right? If you put a record on a record player, the further from the center you go, the faster the record is moving, because there's more distance, right? The size of the circle gets bigger and bigger as you go further and further out from the center of the record, right? So if you imagine a circle, within the small part of the record, right, it doesn't have to travel very fast, because both the inside of the circle and the outside of the circle have to complete their revolutions in the same time, because they're part of the fixed medium of the record, right? So all parts of the record, if you imagine the radius from the center of the record to the outside, all elements of that radius must complete the revolution in the same amount of time, because they're all fixed, right? They have to complete. So if you're doing 60 revolutions a minute, right, you're doing a revolution every second, right? So how fast are you moving? Well, it depends how far away from the circle you are, because if you must complete the revolution in 1 second, the further out from the circle is, the faster and faster you have to go in order to complete it in the same amount of time, because you have more distance to go, because your circumference is longer. All right, so you basically can do this same exact thing when it comes to, for example, planets orbiting a star, right? Because it's kind of the same exact principle, right? It's not exactly, but it's close enough for our discussion, right? The sun is the center of the circle. The planets are orbiting around the circle. Now, in this example, they don't have to complete in the same amount of time, because they're not fixed, right? So that the analogy breaks down that way, because there's nothing forcing them to move faster or slower. But the same sort of generalized principle applies. So you can do the same kind of math, and then you run into the situation where, as you're monitoring planets moving around a solar system, or solar systems moving around the galaxy, they're moving at the wrong speed. They're moving at the wrong speed. And you're like, wait a second, why are they moving at the wrong speed? So something is wrong in this equation, because they should be moving at X and they're moving at Y. They're moving at the wrong speed. Why are they moving at the wrong speed? So one of the ways to solve this problem is that there must be more gravity, because gravity would cause the change of the speed. And the amount of gravity that we need to make the math work is about 95% of the universe is missing. Give or take. 95% of the universe is missing. So the amount of gravity that we need in order to make the math work, 95% of the universe is missing. So okay, well, yeah. So we came up with this concept called dark matter and dark energy. What is it? What makes it dark? The fact we can't observe it. So it's like normal matter. It's like normal matter, except for the fact that we can't detect it in any way. But it has gravity. It has gravity. So it's a mass, right? Because it's dark matter or dark energy, which also converts to mass through E equals mc squared. So it becomes a mass equivalent. So we can say, okay, like 95% of the universe is missing. And, that. So that means, yeah. So that is the current running theory. There is this stuff that interacts, it's everywhere. It doesn't interact chemically. It doesn't interact physically, other than the gravity. So it completely passes through normal matter. In this example, in this hypothesis, this dark matter and dark energy is it's in your room everywhere. It's constantly moving through your room and moving through the barriers of your room like it's nothing. Right? And it's just moving around all the way. And it's a big ass soup the entire universe is sitting in. So that's basically the layman's explanation of dark matter, dark energy. And so basically that's what the current major hypothesis is this dark matter, dark energy. But of course, we've never detected it. We don't know what it is. We just assume it must exist, which to some degree, we have already done when it comes to the detection of planets, including in our own solar system, incidentally, right? Some of the planets in our own solar system were discovered because, hey, wait a second, we can't help noticing that other planets are operating in such a way that it implies there must be a planet of roughly this size at roughly this position, because we can't help noticing the effect this planet we can't see. We can't help noticing the effect of this planet we can't see, but it must be about this size. It must be about this position in the solar system, because we can see its impact on other planets in the solar system. And then presto, hey, wait a second. It turns out there really is a planet that's roughly that size and roughly that shape. Huzzah, right? And this is also how we've detected other planets in other solar systems, right? There must be a planet of about that size, about this distance from the sun. It must exist. Let's look at it. Let's look at it with a telescope. Oh, there it is. There's the telescope. So we've often discovered these planets and solar systems and galaxies using this. So it's like there must be a galaxy, there must be a solar system, there must be a planet of roughly this description in roughly this space for this to work. And presto bingo, there was. Huzzah. And then we're like, okay, 95% of the universe is missing and we can't find it. So that's where we're at right now. This explanation of dark matter and dark energy is brought to you by Uncivil Law. So something is wrong. Something is wrong. So either the dark matter, dark energy exists, it doesn't chemically interact, it doesn't physically interact, it doesn't interact in any other way except for the gravity. That's what makes it dark. We can't see it. So either hypothesis 1, 95% of the universe is missing, but it's really there, we just can't see it. Like the planets that came before it. Hypothesis 2, the equation of gravity is just broken somehow. Which, gravity is the least well understood force of the fundamental forces. So the idea that the fundamental theory of gravity is wrong is not exactly like the most ridiculous explanation we've ever heard. Also, it would be similar in this domain, at least somewhat comparable to like Isaac Newton versus Einstein. Was Isaac Newton wrong? No, he wasn't exactly wrong. It just breaks down when things become really small, really big, or really fast. But as long as things aren't really small, really big, or really fast, Isaac Newton won't get you there. If things are really small, really big, or really fast, then we suddenly have to bring Einstein into the equation. So maybe it's like that. Maybe we need a supplemental theory of gravity that accounts for 95% of the matter that's missing. So either our theory of gravity is right and the matter is really there, or our theory of gravity is fundamentally broken, kind of like Isaac Newton. We need some sort of massive new supplement to the theory of gravity, or physics changes from place to place in the universe, so the universal constants are less universal than we thought. So that universal constant of gravity, not so universal maybe. Maybe it's different in different places for reasons we don't understand. Or, we have a multiverse system, and our universe is one of many universes that exist in some sort of kind of foam kind of thing, and gravity from one universe can bleed over into another universe. So the gravity that we're experiencing is based on matter that exists just not in our universe. It's from a nearby universe, and gravity can somehow transverse universal boundaries. So gravity can interact beyond universes. So maybe it's that, or some other explanation. How did we get into a deep dive discussion of physics? I'm sorry, we moved way past the pale. Let's go back to what is a woman. It's a simpler question.
A lot of them were hurting themselves. A lot of them were suicidal before they even discovered gender. That is never part of the discussion. And they say, what would you rather have? A living daughter or a dead son? If this is what the professionals are saying, it's terrible emotional blackmail.
Hello?
Hey, is this?
This is, yes.
Hey, it's Matt Walsh. Where are you right now?
I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada right now.
Are you able to leave?
I'm not able to leave BC. I can't even go to another province in Canada right now. And it's because I'm technically out on bail.
What happened exactly? How exactly did this get into the courts to begin with?
Right, so what happened is we set up a meeting with BC Children's Hospital. And according to the BC Children's Hospital website, there's going to be a thorough evaluation, and I'm thinking, good, this is going to be the end of it all. They're going to clearly see that my child is not the opposite sex. So my ex-wife brings my child into BC Children's Hospital. I get a call less than an hour into that appointment is that they were going to pump her full of cross-sex hormones within the hour. And I put a halt to that. I said, no. They agreed to stop for the moment. They figured, well, let's get the dad on board too. This is all going to be better. Let's just get everybody on the same page. I said, it's not going to happen. So I get a letter from BC Children's Hospital in December of 2018, and it says that under the BC Infants Act, they will start injecting my child with cross-sex hormones, and I have 2 weeks to respond with legal action if I so choose. And so that's how I ended up in court, because I did respond with legal action.
So you called your daughter a she, and you went to jail for that?
It's considered criminal violence to not use the preferred pronouns. It is no different than, let's say, I were to take a broomstick and whack one of my kids over the head. So they were treating it in a similar fashion, that misgendering, mispronouncing my child was the equivalent of family violence.
Is she on the hormone pills now?
She is. The court ordered that she could do whatever she wanted.
That's messed up, man.
2010 until, I would say...
Using the wrong pronouns is a criminal violation in BC? Well, right about now, I just have to say thank God for the First Amendment, man, and freedom of speech. You know, was it Bill C-16? Jordan Peterson warned us about all this. Not that anyone listened. But yeah, they'd make it a crime here too if they could, I'm pretty sure. Not that they're not trying to fold it into child abuse in some jurisdictions anyway, by the way, as we know from the law, and we know from court cases that have already happened in the United States, including in Texas, incidentally, where this has already happened to some degree. So yeah, they're definitely trying to fold this into criminal behavior, or at least child abuse behavior. So maybe we won't put you in jail for it. Maybe we can't do that in the United States. I don't think we've gone that far yet. But maybe we can strip away your parental rights. Maybe we can do that. So, and that's where we're at on some of these issues.
2016, I would say 80% of my clients were trans youth. Now it is, you identify, you take hormones, you do surgery. There isn't...
I'll take his case. I'll take his case if he wants me as a lawyer. And he can, well, it would mean doing my least favorite subject of law, family law. So this is definitely taking one for the team in a very big way. So if I represent this guy, for example, in Texas, it does mean doing my absolute least favorite area of law. But I can pretend it's not family law and just pretend it's a civil rights or constitutional rights issue, maybe. So maybe I can pretend it's not a family law issue. I don't know how long that's going to work, though. But me taking his case, yeah. But I haven't been asked, so it hasn't come up yet. So, yeah.
Any other pathways?
So if you have two parents, one parent wants to affirm the trans identity, the other parent doesn't, who wins that battle?
The one who wants to affirm.
Every time?
Every single time. The goal is to get the parents to affirm the kid.
There's no such thing as a gender-affirming therapist. That's a contradiction in terms.
Why?
Because you don't affirm if you're a therapist. It's not your business to affirm. You come to see me because there's something wrong. Maybe you come to see me because a destructive element of you is wreaking havoc in your life. I'm on the side of the part of you that wants to aim up, man. That's what I'm on the side of. Okay, now I don't know what that means in your case, but we're gonna talk about it. Am I gonna affirm what you think, No, it's not up to me to affirm it. You don't get a casual pat on the back from a therapist for your pre-existing axiomatic conclusions. That's not therapy. That's a rubber stamp.
Is anybody at any point explaining to these kids the real long-term consequences of hormones and puberty blockers?
I don't think they're explaining it to the kids, so that has frightened me, that it's become, that we're even talking to the kids about it at 10. We're presenting it in schools.
So this generation, they're the lab rats.
Biological sex, binary. It's been binary for like 100 million years, longer than that. Temperament is not binary, temperament or personality.
So that's gender. Temperament is gender?
Well, gender is not a good word because it's vague and it isn't measurable.
So do we need it? Why can't we just say temperament? What do we even need the word gender for?
Well, I don't need it.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that people who talk about the diversity in gender are actually talking about diversity in personality and temperament, but they don't know it. You can have a masculine temperament if you're a woman. Maybe 1 in 10 women have the average temperament of a man. And you can have feminine men temperamentally. And it's not that uncommon because the differences between men and women temperamentally aren't that great. There are masculine girls. There are feminine boys. What are we gonna do about that? Carve them up?
You, as someone who started your professional life, you know, transgender care.
Yeah.
Now you're sitting here talking to me. And I'm a dangerous man, I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
Are you worried about reprisals? Are you worried about how this is gonna play among your professional peers?
I am worried that I can't have conversations with any other peers. I don't know any other peer that will speak to me around these things that question it. I just don't think developmentally this is helpful to our children.
You step wrong as a therapist, you say the wrong thing once and like your bloody career is over. Now it's the same with physicians. How's that gonna work? You're gonna go have an honest conversation with your physician when he's terrified out of his mind that he'll say something politically incorrect during the diagnostic process? Hey man, you're sick with whatever you wanna be. See you later. You want a prescription for something?
I left academia because the climate had become too stifling politically, especially when it comes to the topic of gender identity and the science of gender. It is absolutely impossible to do good research. You basically have to decide beforehand what you're going to find so that you don't upset activists, and that is not how you do science.
Why has this shift occurred where all of a sudden gender and sex have become so politically and culturally charged?
There's a really ugly history between sex researchers and transgender activists. In the past, if any sex researcher spoke out about science that went against activist orthodoxy or particular narratives that activists wanted to promote, they would basically have their personal and professional reputations ruined. So what you see is that only experts who toe the party line and say the things that activists like, those are the people who get attention, those are the people who get lifted up in the media. And also, I would say people are incentivized to go along with the activist narratives and gender ideology because that helps their career.
Trans is very cool. Trans is a way of giving yourself value, given the way society at the moment is functioning. All of the things that used to give us anchors of identity have become very fluid or very volatile in recent years. And into that context, I think what you find then is new identities start to fill the void or the vacuum. Whereas in the past, I might have got my sense of self-worth from being part of the village where I grew up. Now I might get my sense of self-worth through being part of the online community that I connect with, or part of the sexual identity community.
So now we are seeing kids that are identifying as animals going to school, and they are purring instead of answering questions, and they meow, and the teachers are not allowed to question it because it's considered a queer identity.
So you have kids that are going to school and they're saying, I'm a cat.
Mm-hmm.
And the teachers have to affirm them as a cat.
Yes, so it's
the
not
schools
just
are
the
like
young ones.
literal zoos now, basically.
They are.
I am a 27-year-old transgender woman. I am a wolf-therian and a member of the furry fandom.
When and how did you discover this inner wolfness?
There's this sort of law known as Poe's law. It's not a real law. It's just a cultural saying, right? And like other laws that sort of exist, like Moore's law or something like that. You know, there's something called Moore's law, or apologize, Poe's law. There's something called Poe's law, POE. And Poe's law basically says it's impossible to create something satirical that can't possibly be understood for reality. Like, it is impossible for a person to, let's suppose that I oppose anything, right? I oppose anything. And one of the ways I want to oppose that thing is by taking their own argument to like a parodic extreme, right? I want to take their argument and I want to show it to be silly by making a parody of it. I want to make a mockery of it by taking the position and pushing it to such an extreme that it exposes it as, you know, bunk, right? I use the extreme hyperbole to poke fun at the original. Well, Poe's law basically says that's impossible because it's impossible to create a parody that can't be mistaken for truth. It can't be mistaken as a position that someone on that side really would take. It can't be mistaken for a position that someone of that ilk really would argue. So you can't create a position that's so hyperbolic, so extreme, so ridiculous that it can't be mistaken for the real thing. Right about now, I feel like this is a living example of that problem.
Probably around age 10 or 11. I was watching an anime about wolves and see the wolf running across the screen, and I'm somehow just intrinsically like, oh, that's me.
Have you spent any time around biological wolves?
Yes.
That sounds dangerous also. What context are you?
So I was a volunteer with a preserve, and I've also visited many wolf preserves.
Are you able to communicate with the wolves?
Am I going to have a conversation with a wolf in the way that I'm communicating you and I? Obviously not. Am I going to read their body language, respond appropriately to their behaviors and their nonverbal cues? Yes.
Would you be able to give us an example of this wolf communication?
No. I'm not comfortable doing so.
Okay, all right. How exactly have these ideas become so pervasive?
First of all, I think we need to remember that in the West, at least, we have it drilled into our minds from childhood onwards that personal happiness is the key to individual flourishing. Secondly, we think of ourselves in psychological terms. I am my feelings. And in order for me to be happy, I have to be able to express my feelings. I have to be outwardly that which I feel myself to be inwardly. Thirdly, we're taught that interfering with somebody else's happiness is very bad. We need to acknowledge that there are powerful lobby groups, powerful cultural and political lobby groups driving this thing. Hollywood is pressing LGBTQ+ matters in so many movies. We're seeing it in the way Amazon sets up its algorithms.
Yep.
There are all kinds of factors in society that are...
The use of algorithms and AI to push these narratives is becoming of increasing concern. Anyone who's used any AI has run into these problems because the AI is now being programmed with these things. And that's becoming really, really scary with the activists gaining control of artificial intelligence. So that's, well, the form of the dystopia is looking more and more certain with every passing moment.
Pushing what would really be numerically a fairly minority interest into being one of the main political focal points of this generation.
After my operation, I will be a woman.
Why can't she just be a lesbian?
Because she's not a lesbian, Mom. She's a boy.
Because I was born in a girl's body.
Can I ask you a question? Why don't you kiss me?
The whole idea of social contagion, that there could be something in one's social environment that could play some role in somebody coming out identifying as trans, would you say that that is definitely part of your story?
When I look back, I don't think I would have ever even considered seeing myself as a boy without these social aspects, especially if I hadn't joined these online communities.
I identify as non-binary. I'll officially be changing my pronouns to they, them.
My pronouns are he, him, and demon, demon self.
I've been going by they, them pronouns for 4.
I'll call you a demon if you like. I think I can demon self. Demon over here. Yep.
4 years now. I'm pretty comfortable with it.
I use they, them pronouns.
There was literally a period of a few weeks to a few months. I started out as an ally, and then eventually I was starting to identify as transgender.
We are trans models. So they go on the internet and they're told that all of their problems will be solved if they become a man.
Kids are being taught you might feel like you're a boy, even if you have a vagina and you're a girl. You are what you feel you are.
Some people are girls, some are boys, some are both, some are neither. Gender is all about how we feel on the inside and how we express ourselves.
Ah, the gender fluid teacher. What do I go by in the classroom? I go by Teacher Fambrini.
As a queer and trans teacher, my agenda is to show little boys that they don't have to be like as stereotypically masculine, that they can like paint their nails and wear earrings and like still be a guy, and like it can be.
I don't have any particular problem with Teacher Fabrini, by the way, as a title. It's like calling someone professor, but you know, teacher because, you know, K through 12. So actually, Teacher Fabrini as opposed to Mr. Fabrini or Mrs. Fabrini, Teacher Fabrini. Yeah, okay, I'm good with that one. That one you get uncivil approval on. That works.
Be cool.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
Looking back on it, it was the same pattern, just kids who were really struggling, kids who were very alone and isolated.
They have anxiety. They don't fit in with their peers. They don't know where they belong.
Maybe they didn't have a welcoming family life. They just got caught up in these communities online.
Then they discover, hey, there's this group of people, and they also don't fit in. They're different. They're not sure who they are. Gee, that's where I fit in.
Today is the day before my top surgery. I am waking up tomorrow at 5 a.m. to have a subcutaneous mastectomy.
We're telling children when they haven't fully developed that all you have to do is medically transition and you fit in. I was one of those kids. It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
Trans rights. This is only going in one direction. You will respect us.
Help.
As parents come to understand more about gender identity, kids are coming out at younger ages.
It's exciting. And you know who gets it right? Is this next generation.
The next generation who's already telling us that our antiquated ideas of things have to be a certain way just don't apply to them.
They're rejecting a lot of our social mores. They're tweaking the system.
I just don't think it's realistic to put this decision on them that is basically saying, are you okay with the risk of permanent health effects that you can never ever reverse? How can you ask that of such a small child?
Help.
I'm a physician and I use medication.
Certainly, it's a bit of a Faustian bargain.
Puberty blockers, which are completely reversible.
Lies.
You keep invoking the word truth, which is condescending and rude.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
Does a chicken cry? Does a chicken commit suicide?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
I guess because I got a dick.
Matt, I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you, man. Nothing makes any sense.
Somehow this madness has infected our entire society. Am I the crazy one? I'm done asking questions.
Tanner Cross is on administrative leave for what he said about gender identity. He said he would not call a student who's transgender by their preferred pronoun.
I can't lie to children, and I got to also represent a whole community that believes in biological facts and scientific facts. And I can't do that to kids.
You get into teaching because you love kids. This policy started coming into play, and I was like, wait a minute, it's causing me, I'm gonna have to lie to my kids, the ones I've always wanted to protect.
Do we have assaults in our bathrooms or our locker rooms regularly?
To my knowledge, we don't have any records of assaults occurring in our restroom. The predator transgender student or person, simply, it does not exist.
The Virginia Department of Education says it is now reviewing whether the Loudoun County School District has properly reported cases of sexual assault. This comes after a 15-year-old was charged on 2 separate occasions for assaulting 2 different students at different schools.
Dozens rallying tonight in Loudoun County to protest the school's policies.
So that includes limiting who can talk during public comment portions of board meetings. One speaker leased property in the area just so he could speak tonight. Fox 5's Paris Jones is live with the details.
That's right. Conservative commentator Matt Walsh told me he's leasing out someone's basement in Loudoun County so he'll be able to speak during tonight's meeting.
I decided last week to fulfill my lifelong dream of being a Loudoun County resident. You know, I've always felt like I lived in Tennessee. I felt sort of like a Virginian trapped in a Tennessean's body. I identify as sort of state fluid, I guess.
This is Matt Walsh. He tweeted, "How do you do, fellow Virginians?"
Now I just got to explain to my wife and kids that we're going to be staying in someone's basement.
Nice.
They tried to muzzle me by not allowing me to speak. And when that didn't work, they tried to muzzle me with a mask. I would thank you all for allowing me to speak to you tonight, but you tried not to allow it, yet here I am. Now, you only give us 60 seconds, so let me get to the point. You are all child abusers. You prey upon impressionable children and indoctrinate them into your insane ideological cult, a cult which holds many fanatical views, but none so deranged as the idea that boys are girls and girls are boys. By imposing this vile nonsense on students to the point even of forcing young girls to share locker rooms with boys, you deprive these kids of safety and privacy and something more fundamental too, which is truth. If education is not grounded in truth, then it is worthless. Worse, it is poison. You are poison. You are predators. I can see why you try to stop us from speaking. You know that your ideas are indefensible. You silence the opposing side because you have no argument. You can only hide under your beds like pathetic little gutless cowards hoping we shut up and go away, but we won't. I promise you that.
Nice use of 60 seconds. You know, I actually have in my house, I have who is it? Norman Rockwell's Freedom of Speech. I have that painting, Norman Rockwell's Freedom of Speech. The guy standing up at the city council meeting with the program tucked into his pocket, standing up to speak, as, you know, the other people in their suits and dresses and such look upon him as he gets ready to speak to the city council. And that is Norman Rockwell's conception of freedom of speech. And Loudoun County over here trying to interfere with that freedom of speech is, well, just about as un-American as you can get, because once again, it interferes with a couple First Amendment rights, right? Not only does it interfere with the right of freedom of speech, mind you, but there is this other First Amendment right it interferes with, the right to petition the government for redress of grievances, which is a separate First Amendment right, the right to petition for redress. And so we're interfering with at least two First Amendment rights. That's how special we are over here. Fantastic.
Johnny's a boy with a big imagination. One day he's a dog, the next day a crustacean. Johnny's mom loves her son's make-believe time. You're Johnny the Walrus till you change your mind.
Matt Walsh is out with a new children's book. The book is called Johnny the Walrus. What is this about?
It sold out on Amazon in a few hours.
So I have embraced my true calling as a children's author, hence the cardigan. The book is about a little boy who's very imaginative and playful, and like I have 4 kids, and they all have an imagination.
Yeah.
And he likes to pretend to be different things, and one day he pretends to be a walrus. And unfortunately, his mother is very progressive and thus confused, and so she's convinced by the internet and by society that if your child is identifying as something, then he really is that thing. And so she tries to raise her child as a walrus, as a sort of trans walrus, respecting his self-identity. One morning, he came downstairs barking and clapping, wood spoons for tusks and sock fins a flapping. He had spoons in his mouth. He was pretending to be a walrus. I'm Johnny the Walrus, he said with a roar.
Johnny the Walrus,
This is a hot topic.
Yes.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good for us to have these conversations so people open their minds and relearn and unlearn to what we've been taught.
So I want this to be a safe place to talk about and learn.
As you can see, there's an ongoing evolution of language and how people can identify.
My next guest, author and conservative host of Daily Wire's The Matt Walsh Show, talking about his recently published children's book that has since been removed online by a popular large retail chain. Now, Matt says gender is not a social construct, but rooted firmly in biology. True?
True. As human beings, we have a sex, male or female. But as a biological scientific fact. Now, gender is a linguistic term. Words have gender. People don't. You can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. You know, it's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and no matter whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify.
So you think it's a delusion?
Well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. It's like, what is a woman?
Well,
can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't. Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
that describes what?
People who identify as a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
So
you
that's
want to
the
reduce
problem.
women, you want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals, our chromosomes, right? That's what you're saying.
You want to do is
that's what
what you want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood.
Okay.
And turn it into basically a costume that could be worn.
Joining us on stage is Dr. Susie Denbo,
Good answer.
Associate Professor at Kent State University. Dr. Denbo, how do you feel those who oppose using pronouns are taking the wrong approach in this conversation?
There's the extreme approach that you are admittedly taking. And then there's also just ordinary people that might not be comfortable with the language change.
She began by saying that my view is extreme. Okay, so the view that every single person on Earth has held up until 15 seconds ago is extreme. They are conflating gender and sex because on one hand they say, well, you got your biological sex, but then your gender is whatever social construct. But then they turn around and say that trans women are women. So a man who identifies with the gender, the social construct of womanhood, actually is a woman.
Part of me wants to ask why you care so much, because it's really not that big of a deal.
Can I answer that? I care about the truth. So basic truth matters. I want to live in a society where people care about the truth. I care about children, and these insane ideas about gender are being foisted on kids, and that bothers me quite a bit. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them. I care quite a bit, yeah.
I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this, and it seems like we should just keep the dialogue going and hopefully find some middle ground.
There is no middle ground. There's no possible middle ground. Days after they complained they were harmed and CBS removed the episode. Nice.
What do you say to parents? A parent comes to you and says, my 8-year-old son is telling me he's a girl.
Yeah, great. You're going to have them do an experimental procedure that creates the most suicidal ideation of any other population 7 to 10 years after, transition. And here's what I tell parents. You don't have the right to medically transition your child.
We have no research on long-term hormone use. We will be seeing the first generation of long-term hormone use. And we already know, at least with 10 years of hormones, you're giving yourself cancer.
What's your message to parents who are trying to cope with this?
The first thing is to tell parents that they're not alone. It is our responsibility as a parent to be the frontline defense for our children. And I know with my child, a lot of people will say, was it worth it? Because you now seemingly have lost your child. And I'll say, yeah, but at least I've saved my conscience and my morals and my convictions. And when my child turns 25 and says, Dad, where were you? I'll say, I was there. I was fighting as hard as I could. I was not prepared to let this happen.
Does this really matter is another question. So,
matters for those who are getting double mastectomies when they're 16.
Why should we care if we live in a society where gender is fluid?
Well, I cared because my government decided that I had to call people by the terms that they designated, or I'd be subject to legal penalties. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care what your reason is. You don't get control of my tongue.
We live in a climate now in which no one seems to care about the safety of women and girls who are.
Anyone want to go back to physics? I enjoyed that. That was a fun discussion at this point. Anyone want me to explain how GPS works again? I could try to describe Hawking radiation, maybe. Anyone want me to discuss a legal case? How about Korematsu? Or Plessy or something? Or one of the fugitive slave cases. Those are good. Okay.
Are going through a very developmentally challenging time in their lives. They may not want to share spaces with their male peers.
Can I explain the breaking of parity? Well, it's a somewhat theoretical idea taken to its extreme, but there is some laws of physics that basically the short explanation is that it is impossible for these paired particles to both have the same state at the same time, and to change one is to change the other. That's the short explanation. And so obviously we can observe that in small scale. And so the question happens, like, what if you separate these particles by vast differences? What happens then? Because the laws of physics suggest that they must have opposite states at all times. So it lets this situation happen where the theoretical implication of that is that if you separate these particles by, notable distance, that if you change the one, it must necessarily change the other instantly, which obviously violates the speed of light, because now you're essentially transmitting information, namely that the first particle has changed its state is essentially information in the physics view. So you're transmitting this information that the first particle has changed its state instantaneously to its paired particle, no matter where it is. So you're violating the speed of light. And so you run into this question about maybe it's possible somehow to use this phenomena, assuming it's true, to share information instantly and basically violate the speed of light limitations. So there's that. But no one knows for sure if it's really true at these kinds of things. But okay. All right, moving on.
I would not be surprised in a few years, there will no longer be women's sports. It will literally be men's sports and transgender sports.
The question being asked by the trans person is a legitimate one. How can I be happy? The answer being given by having my body transformed to look like the other gender, by having myself pumped full of hormones, clearly isn't working. And we have to find a better and the more humane way of dealing with individuals who are struggling with gender dysphoria.
I have the utmost compassion for people who suffer from gender dysphoria. It's a nightmare for them and their families. The vast majority, up to 90% of kids, if they go through a normal puberty, they're gonna be okay. They will be at peace with their bodies, and they will have avoided dangerous and experimental medical interventions and surgeries.
Maybe we're up against a battle here, up against a hill that perhaps, we're not gonna necessarily win today, but if we don't pave the way for a win, we'll never get there.
So we're going on this journey. Boys can be girls, girls can be boys, men can be women, women can be men. It makes me wonder, what is a woman?
What is a woman? A woman is someone who claims that as their identity. It could be many things to many people.
I think the question really brings up the fact that it is pretty relative, right? That if you ask women across race, across identities, across class, across culture, you will get a different answer.
Some of it is, based on biology. Some of it is based on hormones. Some of it is based on what you wear and how you present yourself.
A woman is not anything in particular. There's no one particular thing.
There is not one particular thing.
A woman is someone who says that she is a woman and transitions to be a woman.
Who says that she's what? Can you define the word woman without using the word woman?
It's actually kind of like, it's a curious question, but
We've been journeying across the country asking people this question, and almost nobody can answer it.
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
Marry one and find out.
So I should go home and ask my wife, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been meaning to ask you something.
Uh-huh.
What is a woman?
An adult human female who needs help opening this.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide.
Well,
so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about. Just last week, an entire generation of young girls watched as our taxpayer-funded institutions permitted a biological man to compete and beat a biological woman in the NCAA swimming championships. What message do you think this sends to girls who aspire to compete and win in sports at the highest levels.
Senator, I'm not sure what message that sends. If you're asking me about the legal issues related to it, those are topics that are being hotly discussed, as you say, and could come to the court.
Well, that is certainly a thing, guys. Wow. Well, that was an interesting react on every possible level. My disdain for the trans activists out there is renewed because literally nothing they're saying makes sense in the most literal meaning of it. It literally does not make sense. I have a computer science degree, and one of the classes I had to take was formal logic. You know, and you get the fun notation with the U and the upside down U and the 3 dots and the triangle and the arrows and stuff like that in formal logic. It's been a long time since I took formal logic. It's been a long time, but I do remember the idea of premises. I do remember the idea of qualifications. I do remember the idea of derived conclusions in a formal logic tree. I know I couldn't necessarily read formal logic anymore because it's been a long time. I can do very rudimentary formal logic. I did it the other day in someone's chat just to prove a point, because we were talking about the difference or lack thereof between not guilty and innocent. And so I was like, you're using these terms wrong. I'm like, fine, I'll break this out in formal logic just to prove it in formal logic. And so I actually wrote it in formal logic in a YouTube chat, which I thought was kind of hilarious. Just, sort of, P, innocent until proven guilty. Q, jury does not return verdict. P, therefore, Q, person is innocent with a not guilty verdict. QED, right? That kind of thing. And you can still do that thing. And so trying to actually, this is literally illogical. This is literally non-tenable. This is literally non-reasonable. It is not reasoned. It is literally unreasonable because it is not reasoned and incapable of reason. Because every time you try to nail it down, it all completely turns to dust. And it's not just like there's a little hole or a little problem and, it works. It works most of the time, but there's a problem, but we can, it just all completely turns into absolute and total dust. Do a little set theory. That's right. Do a little set theory, do a little Venn diagram. Kamala Harris says she loves Venn diagrams. Maybe she can break out the Venn diagram for us. She says she loves the Venn diagrams. Break out a Venn diagram. Break out a little truth table. All that stuff. All that stuff. And it doesn't work. And as it applies to law, of course, a lot of this stuff is coming in my direction too. So it matters to me also as a lawyer because a lot of this stuff is coming into my domain as we face issues with parental rights and fathers' rights and the rights of parents over their schools and their government and so forth and so on. So a lot of this stuff is coming into my domain. So, yeah. This is interesting on a lot of levels. Well, my friends, that'll bring us to the end of our stream, I think. I've enjoyed streaming with you. We do have our regular videos that will come out today as well. So you can look forward to regular videos. Check all that out. That'll be fun. And try to retweet the original thing from Daily Wire and try to share it with other people and tag other people and bring the word out about this abomination and trying to understand what the hell is going on about this. Let me check the super chats before I sign off. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you also for everyone who commented on my thumbnail. A lot of people really liked it, and I do spend a lot of time putting them together for you, so I appreciate it. Just Me gave $9.99. Aussie J gave $2 super chat. Lottie gave a £5 super chat. Bren Mancock gave a $5 super sticker. Laudner Debbie gave 10 gifted memberships. Just Me Sunshine gave 5 gifted memberships, and Pat Cummings gave a $10 super chat, all of which is very appreciated and welcomed. $400 likes. I do appreciate everyone who liked this video, and I appreciate everyone who's watching the video and checking all that out as well. I appreciate everyone who likes the shorts and everyone who helps the channel grow. There will be a short posted in 7 minutes as well. I forget what my video coming up at 1 o'clock is, but there will be a short posted. We're going to Zelda today? Maybe. Oh, I did finally get the Master Sword. And what a great reveal. I mean, that was really, really cool reveal. So I really, really liked that. Really, really liked that reveal of the game. That was really, really cool. So no Florida Man today. We have enough Florida Mans every day. Yeah, the Master Sword reveal was really, really cool. Really, really cool. I was like, it made my estimation of the game go up instantly. It was so cool. I think we'll sign off for now. I've been enjoying the stream. I hope you have too. I'll talk to you soon. Love you all. Bye for now. Bye-bye. And thank you, Sandra, for the gift memberships. It's appreciated.